Welcome to the Swedish Junior Hockey Podcast. Another returning guest, Johan Eriksson from outside of Toronto, Bradford, Ontario, right?
No, my team is in Bradford, but I am usually in Muskoka.
Muskoka.
Half north of Toronto. That's all correct.
All right. Welcome again to the podcast. I think you were the first or second guest that we first recorded.
This episode is brought to you by Scandlux, your home for Scandinavian luxury products for the U.S. market. You can find us at scandlux.com.
Yeah.
Let's get a weather update from Muskoka, Canada, which is on the Canadian-U.S. border, right?
Close enough.
Yeah.
Close. What could it be? Maybe 3-4 hours. So it's close enough.
Yeah. What's the weather up there?
Oh, I'm not there right now. I'm actually in Ottawa. And in Ottawa right now, it's cold. Last night it was minus 31, but they said that it felt like minus 50 because of the winds.
Okay, so that's why I was a little bit confused when you said it was that cold in outside of Toronto, and I thought, wow, that's strange.
Almost that cold in Muskoka as well. So the Rattlers were actually going to play in Muskoka Friday. They were going to play field Friday, and the highway was closed down because of the cold and the weather. So the game was canceled. So it was cold in Muskoka as well. I was just not there.
Yeah. Well, for those who didn't listen to the first time we talked, give a little bit of background, and I want to give a little bit of the three different areas that you work in.
Yeah.
And then I really want to, the main topic, the reason I want to have you back is to get a little bit more we're doing this a little series now of, I'm a Swedish junior hockey player, either an 03 birth year that is getting ready to finish up my eligibility for J20, or I'm an 04, I've got another year, or I'm an 05 and I'm just moving into J20 in Sweden. And I'm starting to think about maybe North America, either in the US or Canada, is a good alternative for one reason or another. So that's kind of what I want to talk about for the majority of the time. But give everybody a little bit, because I know you work for Avenue Sports Management. Start there. What's that all about?
So Avenue is an agency here in Ontario. We're based in Ontario, but we have people everywhere. Work the entire map, but mainly so here right now. And we are 4 people. As of right now, it's me and then one of my partners there, Paige Dixon, who is one of the bigger girl agents actually here, who have a ton of NCAA D1 players, or the players are just heading up that route. So she's been awesome. And then my boss, Errol McDonald, is also like this good guy, was a player before, and he's also an NHL agent actually. So he's working also with the O2K in the US, which is an NHL agency. They have, I think, between 50 and 55 clients there. So he owns the Avenue where I work, and then he also is part of the both. So he's the connection there. So I have my own clients, and I also scout for new ones for them and whatever else I can help with. And then, except from that, I'm also with the Bradford Rattlers. Left my former team, the Niagara Predators, after last season, and then went on to the Rattlers. Tons of reasons why. I think their organization is one of the best junior organization within Canada, actually. Even if the league may not be, the team would be. That's where I'm at with all that. Just based on past years where they can get their players.
And that's in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League. Go JHL, right?
Yeah, no. So the Rattlers is Greater Metropolitan Hockey League, right? So it's the top team there.
GMHL.
Yes. that's where it is.
Yes.
But that team is going into playoffs really soon. They have played 38 games. They have 35 wins, 1 loss, 2 overtimes, I think.
Yeah.
So it's going pretty good for them.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And of course, we just recorded an episode with Jakob Rodin, who's one of your players, that will be released before this one. So everybody should have a good kind of dose of a little bit about the team and the league. But we'll talk more about that as well. And then what's puck support? What's puck support?
Yeah, well, puck support is actually where I live in Muskoka. It's a hockey house. I live with my former billet coordinator from my first team here. She's so cool. her uncle is Harry Sinden, who has been on the Boston Bruin payroll since the 1963, I think. He's been head coach and GM and president. He's now over 90 and he's still on the payroll. So like she's cool. And also there lives my best friend Brady Leibold, who is a former professional hockey player. Was signed to play with Tampa in the NHL actually. He got injuries. Doctors gave him painkillers. He actually ended up living on the streets and also ended up in jail for a certain amount of years. Now, between 3 and 4 years ago, he started something called Puck Support, which is there to ignite change within the mental health and addiction, especially in hockey, but in society in big. So we're right now putting together a lot of information that's going up on the website. We already have it counted as a non-benefit organization. We want to get it one step more. And we even have our clothing line out of the basement. So we fold and we press and we ship it out of there.
Awesome.
So that's like my 3 big ones that I do, and then I'll do whatever I do because it's fun.
So and I think it's great to be able to have that as kind of contextual basis for the conversation to be. So let's get into it from the standpoint of, all right, I'm a Swedish hockey player. Let's start with the male. Because I'm interested too. I mean, I have a renewed focus after my conversation with Oskar Alsenfelt about, they're starting a junior league in Sweden for women, and how do you build that? And one of the things I asked him was, is it good for the SDHL for the females that are finished with hockey gymnasium, instead of going up as an 18, 19-year-old and playing the SDHL, maybe I should be now playing collegiate as a girl. So it'd be great. Maybe Paige should be a guest on the podcast.
They should.
Because Oskar basically said, yes, I see them more as a partner, but also because they know that they need players, and they need players to get better and better. And then when they're done with college, then maybe they'll come back and play SDHL, and so on. But let's start with the males. I'm a 03, meaning I am 19 turning 20.
Yeah.
And I'm playing J20 National in Sweden. And which means I'm going to be sitting here and I've got maybe 2 more months of the season, and negotiations are already happening. Maybe I have an agent, maybe I don't have an agent.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of these guys that are drafted. I'm on a good team or I'm on a bad team, but I've not gotten the sniff at the SHL level or Allsvenskan. And the phone isn't ringing for SHL or Allsvenskan teams looking for me to come play there next year.
Yeah.
Could have been I had an injury, or it could have been that, I'm a good player, but I'm not on the draft boards. And when we count how many teams in the national, 20 teams? No, 16 maybe? Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In J20 National is just, there's a lot of players, and there's a lot more players than there are teams looking for SHL Allsvenskan spots for next year. So, the offers that I'm having is I've got 3 or 4 or 5 Division 1 and Division 2 men's semi-pro teams that are wanting me, but not a whole lot of money, maybe no money.
Mainly no money.
Mainly no money. I may get housing or,
Yeah.
Why should I be looking at North America, and what should I be looking at in North America? Let's start there.
Okay, so like 03s, 04s, 05s who's played in Sweden need a change for whatever reason. The first question I would have for them is what do they want further down the line? What is their goal with not only their hockey career but life as a whole? If schooling over here is something that they have an interest in, for example, they almost got to be over here to play, right? So for say an 03 who is played in junior 20 national, and he is up there, even junior 20 region, if it's a top guy, they can reach the North American Hockey League, like the NAL, for example. From the NAL, there it's a fairly easy access to NCAA Div 1, because that is one of the grounds for that league, right? That's the US system of everything, the USHL, the NAL, the NCDC. It's all so that those guys are going not to go to the CHL in Canada, but move up to the NCAA level.
Yep.
But there is so much more than just NCAA Division 1. People don't think about. You have an NCAA Division 3. You have an ACHA Div 1 to Div 3, and you have even in Canada, you have U Sport, which is NCAA Division 1 level hockey. So like you have so many different routes that you can go. But I'd say for these guys, if you're good enough to play in the top leagues over here as a junior, that is the best thing you can do. If schooling and university and all of that is your goal, that's the best thing you can do.
So let's say, not to burst bubbles, but let's say now I went through hockey gymnasium, and I took carpentry.
Yeah.
I kind of went the route of high school I got my diploma, but my degree was really in a trade.
Yeah.
I did the plumbing, I did electrical, I did HVAC, or I did, more of the trade side.
Yeah.
Not to say that, that you can't go to college after that, but I really haven't been focused on it. Right. I could still, because I'm now older and I can resaddle and say, I can still go to college.
Yeah. And that's one of the things they can also do during your year. Say that you do end up playing 1 year in the NAL. Like all these teams and schools, they have their programs where they can, like, that's one of the things. Yeah, it's not only they want you in the NAL before you go NCAA, because even Swedes who commits to play Division 1 hockey is usually placed for a year in the NAL before that, just to acclimatize, just to get used to the smaller rink, because it's a big difference, and it's a big difference in the game compared to Swedish junior hockey. You know that, Jakob, as well as I do. So it takes some time, but that's also a good time if you do need more help at school. That's the time you can do it. But also when you look at school and where to go, like a good student wouldn't be able to take anything or would get anything from, say, a elite school, say Harvard or your Yale. It wouldn't happen. But then the lower schools, they don't really care as much about the schooling part.
Yeah.
So like it all depends on the school, on the program, how hard they are.
So let's do the because I was there when I came over as an exchange student in 1993. I'm aging myself a little bit here.
Yeah.
And I actually I didn't play hockey. I was at the time, and my way of paying for college was to play football.
Really?
And yeah, but mine was not soccer. It was American football. And so I ran into this. Okay, you have to score at least 600 on the SATs. It's changed the SAT scores, or the ACT scores, has changed a little bit. We talk, actually, me and Jacob Rodin was talking a little bit about it as well. And then I had to take the TOEFL, which is a placement test for English proficiency.
Yeah.
And that's all I thought that I needed. And then I went to play football. I went to East Tennessee State, and we went to camp. I was what's called a preferred walk-on. Didn't have a scholarship, but that was my plan, as earn a scholarship. And back then it was called it was 1AA.
Yeah.
NCAA, which is now FCS. And this thing came up called the NCAA Clearinghouse. And they asked me, where's your paperwork for the NCAA Clearinghouse? And I said, what's that? And I'm at camp. And I didn't know that I needed that step. So of course I was not eligible to play. And there went my dream of paying for college that way too.
Yeah.
So same thing goes for NCAA D1 and D3. And I'm not sure about ACHA have different rules, but okay, I'm coming in. I have to show that I have the grades to get into school. I was accepted, and people have to have the prerequisites. You have to take the SAT, ACT, and TOEFL, but you also have to make sure, and this is what's really, really important, is let's talk about the NCAA Clearinghouse. They're going to check to make sure that you are still maintaining your amateur status.
Yep.
And if you don't file that paperwork, if you're not cleared with NCAA Clearinghouse, they're not going to allow you to play.
No, then you're not playing. And there is a million ways to lose your eligibility too. They have so many rules, right? Like it's that's where it's like, for me, who is fairly new working NCAA, it's amazing to have someone like Paige, who's been doing it for a few years and knows like everything. So like it's a very big luxury for me.
And it could be and they don't really care how good you are.
No,
because they are not working for the school, they're working for the NCAA. And if you are not eligible, you're not eligible.
Yeah, exactly. If you have had a professional contract, you're not eligible. If you get your sticks paid for every year by someone, you're no longer an amateur. If you're not longer an amateur, you can't play. Now you can actually have played games in the SHL and Hockey Allsvenskan prior to playing NCAA, as long as you didn't play on a rookie contract or a contract where you got paid.
Yeah. All right. So now let's say that's not an issue. And I'm now, so realistically, let's take USHL, United States Hockey League. The highest level of U.S. juniors.
Yeah.
If we did a reverse engineering study in elite prospects, and we look at where does the players come from that are playing in the USHL. So let's take our favorite one, Dubuque Saints. Kalle Larsson is a Swede. Swede is the general manager for Dubuque. And I had this conversation with some guys before on a different podcast, and we were talking about the guys that he's recruiting to play in Dubuque are pretty impressive resumes.
Yep.
Not J20 region.
No.
J20 national, and not just J20 national.
Pro
guys
experience. Team, say Samuel Sjölund, when he went there, he was already drafted Dallas 4th round. Like, do you get players who's already NHL drafted?
So those guys that are coming to play for Dubuque and the USHL, they're already in talks with the NCAA D1 teams.
I'd say some of them have probably already committed before they even play the season in the USHL. Some of them may just go USHL and actually doesn't have an tend to go NCAA later. They want to do 1 or 2 years in the USHL and then see if they can go play pro. And from USHL, can go play pro. Like a camp in the coast, maybe if you're being real good, maybe even a camp in the American League. Like it's doable because it's that good hockey.
Yeah. But you know what their model is, of course, you know, he's bringing in it's going to be interesting to see what comes this year, but I would, the model, if you follow his strategy, is last year people that have exhausted their eligibility in J20 in Sweden, and then they come and they still got one more year of eligibility in the US, and he's getting and the path is finish J20 national and then go in USHL, and then you go straight into D1 NCAA, which has been kind of the path. And then he comes in with another 4 guys because he's restricted with the import slots.
Yeah.
But
he'd have all of his, like he knows in advance who he wants.
Yeah. So, but let's say, and USHL is not just Dubuque Saints. They are chock full of that caliber players.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not that's another level. That's draft picks, D1 commits. If you look at the rosters, most of the people playing USHL are D1 commits already.
Yeah, I'd say like in general, probably 3 to 6 guys in any team will end up playing NHL games.
Yeah.
Like that's how good it is.
Yeah, and I would encourage any listener to just go to the USHL teams and then look at both on Instagram and you see the rosters that they post, and you see which ones are draft picks, which ones are commits, and it's all of them. It's not just the top teams.
Yeah, like what round they are drafted. Like you'll find first rounders playing there.
Yeah. So, all right, but let's say I'm not playing on the Swedish national team, because the choice that the guy on the Swedish national team has is that they are also getting looks and negotiations with Allsvenskan and SHL teams. But now I'm the other guy that is at the bottom. Maybe I'm up and down. You know, I played on the national team. I've got 40 games I'm not the national team, the J20 national. But I'm not getting those, you know. So North American Hockey League is still a very, very good league.
Yeah.
Would you say that North American Hockey League is a step up from J20 national, or is it just that it's older players?
It's okay. So I wouldn't say that the level necessarily is higher, but it is different hockey. It's a smaller ice. It's far more physical, and over here you call it like you play against men. If you play against men, like a guy who is say under 190 and is gonna be out there, is not gonna weigh enough. It's that like how they count it. It is good level, but skill wise and all of that, I'd say Sweden national is at least there too.
But what's the advantage of North American Hockey League is that for juniors you don't have to pay.
Yeah, that's true. In the NAL, the only thing you would have to pay for is your billet.
Okay.
That's what you have to pay for, around $450, $500 a month. But that includes your housing. That includes all the food. It includes Wi-Fi. It's literally exactly what you would cost at home.
Yeah.
Like the family don't make money, but you get everything you need.
I would say if you're a billet family and you've got a 19-year-old Swede that comes over, they will eat more than $450 a month in food.
Big time.
Yeah.
They
will a good deal.
More. So yeah. but that's just that's how they do it these days. Like COVID was rough for everyone.
Yeah. But you do get equipment, right? I think you get sticks.
Yeah, sticks. That
Maybe
you
not
do.
skates.
No, and not helmet. Helmet you can't, right? Like it's a insurance issue. You got to own. Yeah.
So if you have a UFA VM helmet, you can bring it.
Nah, I doubt it.
Okay, that was a side joke here. All right, but I think that the opportunity there is absolutely, if you can get in and you can get a null spot,
yeah,
you got a pretty good shot at making a D1 team.
Something in D1. If you go over and you do it well, now if you're gonna go over and play in the null, you got to remember you only have 4 import spots a team. If you don't perform, they are gonna move you.
Yeah.
Like you win and think that you can go in on one skate because you have some games in the SHL, for example. No, it doesn't work that way. Like it's by those 4 players that they can bring in from outside, they have to be first, second line. If it's a goalkeeper, you got to be number 1. And that's just how it is. But like, it's just that the players needs to understand that before they go.
And will typically the team pay for the transfer fee?
Depends, but more usually yes. Usually,
but not always.
Not always.
Yeah. So you may have a spot, but it's all negotiated, right?
Like even some null teams, I think this may be a teeny bit bullshit, but some null teams, they do their own teams in Beantown, and like they do all the Boston things, that like the Chowder Cup, right? And they say that's the only place we pick our imports. So then you gotta go there and you gotta pay a bit to play in the tournament, and then they may or may not take you.
Yeah.
That there is other ways. So you just got to know who to speak with.
Yeah. And you got to be careful a little bit. So what's then the difference between North American Hockey League? Well, let's back up. USHL, and then you have in US, and then on the Canadian side, the tier 1, of course, is going to be your WHL, Western Hockey League, OHL, Ontario Hockey League, and QMJHL, which is Quebec Major Juniors. Those is what we call the major juniors in Canada.
Yeah, major juniors, but actually not counted as junior because they get some pay to play there, right? So they're no longer junior players. They're no longer amateurs, which is why if you play one game in the OHL, for example, you can never play NCAA.
As of it is today.
Yes, as of it is today.
And I know that there's a lot of discussions about, especially with the NIL money that some people get, and is that going to now make Canadian majors? Is going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with that.
It is, and it's so much other stuff that's happening within Hockey Canada and stuff. So there is quite a bit that's up in the air. That's over the next coming years is going to be really interesting. But I think it needs to happen for hockey too, and have the roads just as easy access for players as possible, so players actually end up playing the level they should be at.
And I think that if you are playing OHL, WHL, or the Q, now they have import rules that there's not a lot of Swedes that are playing there from Sweden.
No, there's a few. But the guys who are there are like, so if you want to play, say, in the QMHL or the OHL, if you're not drafted to the NHL, you need to have been drafted in the import draft by the team in the OHL or Q or the Western Hockey League. Because if you're not, you can't play.
Yeah.
Or you can only play there if they drafted you, period.
Yeah. And let's be frank, the people that are playing there from outside of Canada, or the Swedes that are playing there, are top. Those guys may go play in the NHL.
Yeah. Like they have 3 imports, right? Like those imports in say the OHL, they have to be up there. Otherwise, they're not taking them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Oh, Leksand player that Bergqvist was playing in the OHL.
Yeah, Axel Bergqvist.
Axel Bergqvist.
And then you had Oscar Olausson, was there last year in Barrie. The Colorado prospect. He went there from HV, 71, I believe.
Victor Rask played for Calgary Hitmen before. You know, he chose to go there instead of playing in Sweden.
Landeskog was was the captain for Kitchener Rangers, for example.
That's where Bergqvist was too, Kitchener, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, all right, but what I want to get to is now more, you know, the lower level, because these guys that are the drafted guys, it's so much, but I'm not drafted.
Yeah.
What are the restrictions for that second tier guy that is not drafted to play in the CJHL?
Yeah.
Canadian Junior, so Junior A.
Yeah.
So BCHL, AJHL, help me out.
AJHL and then the Saskatchewan one. Those fours. Yeah.
SJHL. What are the import rules there?
They can't use imports. That's the rule. They cannot have imports at all. So in Canada, there is only actually a league where we have the Rattlers, the GMHL, who can use imports.
And those which is a little bit of the opening for, because you are still considered. So what's the difference between the GMHL and the AJHL?
Well, so the AJHL is a junior A league in Alberta. Extremely good hockey. Cale McCarr played in that league before he went to the NCAA. Like, it's Brooks. You don't pay to play. It's good. That's probably not level. I'd say it's probably the same level as the North American Hockey League. But anything under Hockey Canada, you cannot play with imports. There is one way around it, which is that if you have the money, you can play over in Canada for 2 years and be here on a school visa and go to school. We've had Swedes do that within the GTHL AAA system. We have quite a bit of Russians doing that right now. And after they do that for a certain amount of years, which is right now 2 years, they can actually get drafted into the OHL draft, but as a Canadian, which means they wouldn't take an import spot. And if you can do it that way, then you can play Junior A, Junior B like that in Canada. Right now, I have Marek Pavlas, he's from Czech Republic. He's going to Guelph University, and he's playing for Caledonia Corvers in the GOJHL, which is really, really good Junior B hockey. So, and he shouldn't be allowed to play there, but he goes to school. He's been here for over 2 years before, so now he can.
Yeah. And the level of play, there's a lot more teams than there are in the North American Hockey League. So that means that there's going to be a much more spread between the Brooks Bandits at the top and I don't know who another one of the teams that may be at the bottom. Where if you look at the roster of Brooks and you see, I think last year one of the guys from Brooks went to Michigan and played NCAA. A North Carolina guy, Devin Phillips, went to Holy Cross, after playing in Brooks. But and the same thing with BCHL, very, very strong league. But I want people to understand, in Sweden, you can't just go in and say, oh, well, I want to play there. Your hands may be tied. You may be good enough to play in Junior A, but there's restrictions that prevent you from doing it. Jakob Brodin probably was good enough to play Junior A in the AJHL.
Yeah, like just level-wise, absolutely. He could go in there. Same with Jesper Eriksson or probably, to be honest, 3 lines with the Rattlers could go in and play there straight away.
Yes.
Honestly, especially But the team is a very, very good one. I usually say that name one junior A team within Canada or even North America who every year sends players to NCAA, U Sport, the NOL, the NCDC, professional players in Europe, or better leagues within North America. I'll wait. Yep. Because Rattlers can do that every year, but yeah.
But not every team within that league, because there's 3 divisions. So, and this is what I want to tell everybody: use elite prospects. Look at last year and the year before and the year before. Now there are some COVID, because of COVID, but go back several years and then use the functions. You may have to pay for the elite prospects tools to be able to do some of those, but it's cheap and it's worth it.
The info you can still get pretty easy, even on the free one, and like that's what I tell families and players to do research. And how do you do research on a good or junior organization? Well, in my opinion, it's not really about who's the winning most games on ice, but who is advancing most guys to legitimate places. And I that's what they do really, really well with the Rattlers. And a lot of teams do that well, if we're gonna be perfectly honest here.
All right. So let's talk about the next level. You have EHL, USPHL, and NA3.
That's not next level. Come on.
It's next level down, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then I agree.
Yes. So. But let's talk about that, because there's a lot of those guys now. Well, before we get there, you have NCDC, which is not USA Hockey sanctioned. Probably have gotten a little bit less. It's gotten lower in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Compared to where they used to be, but it's still considered tier 2.
It is.
It is still. You don't have to pay.
But so certain players NCDC do pay, and also certain players that they bring them in on a 2-way deal, right? So like, you have one contract if you play NCDC, but NCDC is owned by the USPHL, so every team has to they can send players up and down to the USPHL, but then they have in the contract that the price might be 11,000 USD to play.
Yeah.
So you get 2-3 games in NCDC, and then there is a ton of players who get sent down to the USPHL, and then they have to pay a lot of money.
But that wouldn't happen, would it, Johan?
That's happened more than I know my fair share of my own players who's been there.
Yeah, and I want to throw a word of caution. Yeah. With that, because if you read that contract, it is not a very. I've heard a lot of people who says, if you really knew what was in that contract, you would never sign it.
No.
But on the other hand, you may not be. If you are in that situation, it's probably because you don't have a North American Hockey League deal.
Yeah.
You don't have or you're not eligible to play in the junior A and for the AJHL or BCHL or the CCHL or the SJHL. So now you're sitting there and you get this offer, and it says, "Oh, you don't have to pay a thing," but So do your homework there too, because there's some that are doing the bait and switch game in that area, right?
Yeah.
And. But if you did the reverse engineering, all right, so what? You're still playing juniors. What's bad about the USPHL? So I get sent down to USPHL Premier.
Yeah.
What's bad about that?
Well, it depends. Is it
and I want to go to college.
That you pay 11, 12, 13,000 US dollars, then I wouldn't necessarily say that's a good deal.
But and how many of those kids actually go play college?
Well, USPHL has advanced. There are quite a few too, especially like NCAA Div 3 and ACHA. But those leagues you can get to from any of these leagues. Like
yeah. You don't need to go. Yeah, you don't need to go play USPHL to go play ACHA.
No.
D3, maybe a little bit different story, right?
No. The only thing there is that most of the guys say looking to join the GMHL over the USPHL, they rather looking at going maybe professional next year, because that's the main route from there. But if you actually look, then like Rattlers had 2 NCAA Div 3 commits from last year. And the only thing is that there hasn't been a whole lot of players looking to play NCAA from going here. Like that's more U Sport or AHA Div 1, like certain programs there, very, very common. But the thing with NCAA Div 3 too is that, you know, you don't have your lower paying, like you don't have your what's it called, the scholarships there. So it is a full price, right? And like around 30,000 USD for 1 year NCAA Div 3. I ask you, where can you go and play in Europe after NCAA Div 3? Yeah, you can go the same leagues as you can go from the GMHL or ACHA Div 1. So like if you're going to pay that, it better be that you're there for school, because the hockey is not, it's called NCAA. I don't rank it much higher than ACHA Div 1 for the top teams, at least.
So I'm glad you mentioned that about, I'm going to get how many of the players do you think that are playing NCAA D1 gets a full ride?
Oh, very few. Very few.
Very few.
Fucking tops 2 per team, except for the elite schools like Harvard, Yale, Print. Like they don't even have those.
Yeah.
Everyone full on the Ivy League schools, they don't do it. So, but for everyone else, you have 2, 3, sometimes 4 in the entire team. That's it. The rest pays, but you have up to 18 scholarships, right? So that can be you are covered to 90%, you're covered to 80%, maybe you only cover to 20%. So it's very different.
Except for maybe Air Force, and that is D1, but there you're gonna have to sign the dotted line that you may have to go to
war or like
Saudi Arabia for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They get the perk for that, I bet.
Yeah, but I think that's, you know, so if you look at like why did some player go from D1 and then they end up going back to juniors, or they may go from D1 and then they play D3, or may go from D1 and go down to ACHA, is that maybe they didn't get any playing time and they're still paying $30,000 US per year, and they were really there for hockey. That's a very expensive way of spending. And what they don't realize is that if you're living in Boston and you go into this school, the housing is not cheap either.
No.
So you know, the tuition may be one thing, and then you got the housing. So things to be really, really cognizant about, and so on. So, all right, let's switch gears a little bit. As a scout, and you're negotiating, and also as a player agent, but primarily as a scout now. So you mentioned, kind of alluded to, if you're talking to the GMs and the head coaches and the player development staff for the North American Hockey League, what are you looking for? You know, because I'm a Swede now and I'm an 03 and I want to play in the North American Hockey League. Sounds really, really good.
Yeah.
But what is it that they're telling you that they want?
Well, first of all, it's the skating. The skating part is very, very hugely important. Why is it hugely important? Well, all the professional hockey are going faster. That makes it that every NCAA school, that's what they're asking for. Before they ask anything else, how is the skating? How is the speed?
Yeah, when you're saying then, and because I hear it all the time, skating is so important. What are the 2-3 things of, if you break down the skating, that they say, this is what I'm talking about?
Edges, and top speed, acceleration, but the edge work for sure.
And starting and stopping, the ability to close the gap,
and like the technical aspect to skating in general, like how well educated are you? Now Swedes are usually very well educated, because you know they bring in
power skating coaches and stuff from a young age to pretty much all the teams. Whereas
But
here you like find it more.
But I think another part about that though is that they may be a little bit more of the smooth, longer term. You know, if you're looking at the J20 game, it's longer, it's bigger.
Bigger eyes, you know, like they, of course it's a bit of a difference. But then like they look on more than just the skating, of course. Character is one of them. Like how are you interacting with the refs? How are you interacting with your teammates, your own teammates, the player you play against, like that kind of thing. Like how professionally do you act? That is one thing. The physical part in the null is huge. Of course, that's one thing. If they take a look at you and you're not big enough, they're not interested.
Yeah. No, I think that is, so you could be a really good player and you could have a lot of skill, but you may not, let's be realistic, you may not get as many looks, or the looks that you're getting may be, so we have this, so I'm doing this project now that, you know, we're putting together so what are the things that they want to see? Because we had this conversation with Mike Bloom from the Lone Star Brahmas about, you know, who's in the North American Hockey League. And he says, you know, they're not out there looking at your games right now. You're an 03 player. You may be playing J20 National or Region. They're not looking at your games because they don't know you exist.
No.
So what are your advice for that player to say, how do you get on their radar?
Well, if you are in Sweden
and they're not working with Johan Eriksson and Avenue Sport,
that network isn't the best, then reach out to a guy like me or talk to your coach. Does your coach know anyone who has contacts over there? The hockey world is huge. Also, what they scout with now, especially after COVID, they're really not out scouting much. They use Instat.
Yeah,
that's what's being used right now because it saves so much time, it saves so much money, and all of the team can take a look shift by shift. They don't have to see the full games.
But before they even, but here's the problem. They don't know that you're interested in going to the US. So they're not. So before they're going to, what's the interim step that you would say for the first thing?
Get an advisor.
Okay.
That's or reach out to the teams. Make yourself noticed. Some of them do have camps that are open even. You can go on that even if I don't think that's the best way to do it.
And because I had this conversation with Mike, and Mike was like, yeah, don't send me a 60-minute video.
They're not gonna, and they don't have to send any videos because all these guys and all these teams, they have Instat. If they are interested in you, that's where they will look. If they have contacts on site in Sweden, yeah, maybe you will get scouted on site, but very seldomly. And like someone from the US is not going to go over to Sweden.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Like for the Rattlers, we had a scout from an all team 2 or 3 weeks ago looking at one of our guys for next season. But we're over here, right? Like we're so close.
Yeah.
So very different.
But I think that it's, put together a simple resume or as a curriculum vitae, and just to say that has your, who you are, right? Make it easy for them. And maybe you make a 60-second little snippet.
I wouldn't. And also I wouldn't reach out to a coach. Like coaches get these messages from kids 40, 50 times a day, probably. They probably won't even read it. So you got to have some way in.
Yeah. And I think that's the, let's correlate this with the business world.
Yeah.
You hear people saying, and I've had guests on that were coming from the US going to play in Sweden, and they said that they were sending out, they were sending emails to everybody. The same thing happens to the US. If you're sending resumes to try to get a job, and you can send out 1,000 resumes, and they don't look at those. They go through recruiters. They, just like you guys go through scouts. They're going to go through the recruiters in business to see, I've got this opening for this managerial position. They may get resumes, they're not going to look at.
No.
And I think that the important thing is get connected and know who to talk to, but also be realistic about. And I think that the most important thing is that so if you're interested in going, already start processing in your mind, well, what is it that I want to do? Do I want to go and have a year of fun and then go back?
Which is okay. That some wants to do, right? And then schooling is for one, or even professionally stay and play hereafter and no interest in school. I have, like, all of the Swedes I have here, they want some of each.
Yes. And I think, isn't that what you probably do a little bit of an intake, so to speak. First thing you want to know is, well, okay, well, who are you and what are your goals and what are your dreams and what do you want to do? It's like the old Twisted Sister video that says, what do you want to do with your life?
Exactly.
Oh, Johan, it's we could talk for hours, but I really appreciate, as we're having this, we're discussing back and forth, navigating through. It's a little bit complicated.
It is. No, of course it is.
But I think it's really something that the Swedish junior player should be looking at, is maybe ask themselves, like, maybe that sounds like a pretty cool thing to do, and get educated on what does that look like. Maybe look at each league and see who are the Swedish players who are playing there now. Where did they come from? And
talk to the Swedish players that are playing there. Like get some information from, like, an actual source. Like, if you're interested coming over playing for my team over here with the Rattlers, reach out to Jesper Eriksson, reach out to Rodin, Arvid Malm, or whoever it may be, right? Like, they're good people to talk to. So
yeah. And I think that the other thing is, I know. So what's the best way for them to reach you? What's the easiest way?
Social media under my name, or even just direct look up Avenue Sports Management and contact them. For any Euro player that comes through Avenue, goes my way either way. So it's it's easy. Contact Avenue, contact me directly. Have my phone 24/7 usually.
Yeah. Even not right now, but even in the summertime, even laying in the pool, with a cold beverage. I know that's the last time you and I talked. So
I always take the phone, even if it's vacay time.
All right, Johan, we will talk again. We got a lot of irons in the fire. Good luck with puck support. It's exciting venture. I know that's close to your heart, and I know Bradford is ramping up now. When this release is released, which is going to probably be in 4 or 5 weeks, it'll probably be
the playoffs.
So that'll be fun to watch, and we'll talk again for sure.
Sounds good, buddy. Okay, thanks for having me on.
Thank you.